Welcome back to the South African Morning. Now, there are fears that thousands may have left the schooling system due to the lengthy closures last year. Education experts say many pupils may have found ways to support themselves and their families, and returning to school would not be in their interest. Let's now discuss this with Professor Labby Ramrathan from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Prof, good to have you and good morning to you. This is concerning. I mean, last year we did see this dropout rate. It is expected to soar, and some of the reasons are quite, disheartening, because you're of the opinion that some of the reasons might be that, these young people and young learners may have found other means to sustain themselves.
Good morning, Tumelo, and to your viewers as well. Yes, it's a big issue. I think, we talked about all issues that are being complex. Now, this is a very, very complex issue. I mean, the whole situation within the country is quite dire. If you note that, for example, the unemployment rates, more than 50% of them have not completed matric, and you wonder why. And if you look at the poverty index that we have, it's quite substantial. So in this period that we are in currently now, exacerbated by the pandemic, we find lots of homes are struggling, and people are now going to try and find alternative ways of simply venting the income into the family. And this is an opportunity now, not to pay attention to school, but to pay attention to livelihoods.
Yeah, I mean, I remember during an address by the DG, he had said that around 15% of learners last year could not be accounted for in the system. And when we look at the numbers, back in 2019, 12.4 million pupils were enrolled at public schools at this time. Prof, what do you think it would take to have these learners back into the system?
Well, it takes a lot of motivation. I think a lot will come from the schools, from the teachers, from parents. And that's the only way that we can actually manage this. If you look at government only trying to tell you that please come back to school and try and provide opportunities. But the motivation needs to come, and motivation can only come from people around those learners.
Now, when we look at, some of the costs, of these closures last year, according to Stellenbosch research, they're saying that lower immunization rates, large learning losses, and this brings back to, the fact that not only are we losing learners, we're also losing teachers due to COVID, but also some are retiring. So it seems the department, as well as the schooling system, is under strain here.
Absolutely. The whole education system is under constraint, and we can't continuously blame apartheid for all of these things. We've got enough processes and structures in place to manage it, but it's just accountability and the way in which we prioritize things to help us. At the moment, we are producing sufficient teachers for the education system, but what you find is that there are still a lot of qualified teachers that are unemployed or underemployed. And so there's a whole lot of things. For example, another example is in terms of the quality of schools. We've got 60% of our schools are basically quintile 1 to quintile 3 schools. And the conditions under which you teach and learn in those schools are quite dire. We should have actually begun at this point in time, and after 20 years, got rid of quintile 1 and 3 schools and have schools that are well functioning, that could enable teaching and learning, so that the interest of education can be brought back to education.
And with that being said, Prof, how effective then is e-learning in terms of not only, the distribution of, actual laptops and making sure that kids are connected either via Wi-Fi, but there's more connectivity between learner and teacher, but also presence, because I think teachers were able then to assess presence mentally of a learner when they are in class monitoring their progress. But if they're at home, you're not sure if, they're really invested in their education, or it's just a matter of, let me do what the teacher wants and then switch off and play some games, or, not be interested in school.
Yeah, look, we try to prepare teachers for the electronic and digital world of teaching and learning, because that's the future. And for the last 2 decades, teachers have actually had training in understanding and use of computers and so forth. It's just that the opportunities that have not been in place, largely due to the level of the quality of teaching and learning in the context that we have. And I think COVID-19 has created that opportunity now for teachers to fast track into that new realm of teaching and learning. And yes, standing on the other side of the computer, you'll not be able to, engage and interact with the learners in a way that you have in a face-to-face situation. But if we had more opportunity for teachers and learners to use digital technologies in teaching and learning, we would have found ways in which to actually manage that.
Yeah. And before I just let you go briefly, I mean, how can parents also be, involved in part of the solution to this problem? I mean, how can they be engaged?
I think the first thing that we have to do is to actually engage with parents to understand the value of education for the learners. And many of the parents that we know of, education has not materially altered their lives. And now you want them to actually motivate their learners or their kids to actually take education serious. So what we need to do is start with parents to actually begin to see, engage them in terms of how do you actually begin to read the world in the future. And then to perhaps educate them and then with that being the process that you start now to motivate the learners to get interested and engaged in education.
Thank you so much, Prof. We'll leave it at that. Professor Labby Ramrathan.